Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. Just a second here. I'm trying to get my other tablet to wake up over here. So I have to get I always have to be able to see the comments over here. All right, just a second here. There we go. Okay, so it's working now. So how is everybody this evening? A few people, anybody coming in yet? So we're going to finish up our pillow tonight. This pillow is actually really fun to finish because there's quite a few little things to do, and it does take a little while. Just, I've pre-done part of it so that we can just talk through some of it. A little bit of it, some of it takes just a little while. Hi, everybody. People are coming in. Can't see who it is. Okay. So remember, if it's okay with you, StreamYard does not allow me to see your names unless you okay it. So if you go back to this post on Sew Along with Jan on Facebook and just click the little button that says, okay, it's all right for you to see my name, do that. And then I'll be able to see your name on StreamYard too. But you have to okay it first. And I have a tablet over here so that I can see some people's names over there. But it's nice over here because the screen's bigger. I don't have to put my glasses on to read so much. So. Hi, how is everybody this evening? So I had a beautiful day today and had some dinner with friends, and I came home and I had to, my tire sensors were all on in my car. So it gets cold. My car's been sitting in a garage for a year, and now it sits in the carport outside. So it needed the tires pumped up. So I went out and pumped up my tires this afternoon. So got that done. And I have one of those small inflators. It works really great though, but it just takes a few minutes. So all right, so we have a lot to do tonight. I did pre-assembled a few things so that we wouldn't have quite so much to do tonight. This is really fun to put together. There's a lot of little things and the embellishments on the Kimberbell projects really make them. They're fun. They do take a while to assemble at the end. I've always thought, oh my gosh, the assembly part's the longest part, actually. You would think it'd be the fastest, but they do a lot of little fun things that makes the project so much cuter. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera over, and we're going to talk about the first step we have to do. I'll show you I actually did sew my pieces together. So of course, the first thing is you have to sew the blocks together to make the middle of your pillow. So I'll do that first. So let me get back to my comments here. Okay. All right, so let me switch the cameras over. I got my camera over here on my ironing area so that I can show you the first couple steps here. Get my camera microphone. There we go. Okay. All right. So the first step in the assembly, the assembly part is going to be starting on page 26 of the instructions. And of course, we have pre-quilted these, so some of the stuff we're not going to do some of the things that they have in this assembly instructions. We've already done some of that because we've quilted the pillow. So in the hoop. So the first thing, of course, you need to sew these blocks together with a 1/4-inch seam. So I've got all my blocks in the order, and they show you in the order here, to put them. So I've got them all sewn together. And then what you want to do is with these, since they're kind of bulky, I like to open my seams up so that the seams are flat, and it does work quite well that way. So I have all my seams laying flat, and I have this is my center strip. So I'll turn the camera a little bit so you'll be able to see. So here's my strip all the way up here. Okay. So after we get that done, this pillow has this cool little snowdrift that goes along the bottom. And how this works, so if you got the embellishment kit, it's all cut for you, which is really nice. If you need to cut it yourself, in the back of the instruction booklet, there is a little pattern that you can tape together, see? and you can cut it out of your heat transfer vinyl. So that's one reason why I bought the embellishment kit, because it was already cut for me, and it made it a little bit easier than, trying to cut it myself. I did cut one for Judy though, and it wasn't hard. You just have to have about 4 feet of this continuous glitter vinyl. So we just ordered, a big roll of it when we had to do Judy's. Okay. So what we're going to do then is we're going to line up. It tells you to line up the left edge. Let me turn the camera just a little bit so you can see. Okay. Line up the left edge, okay, with the left edge of your vinyl and the bottom edge on the bottom. Okay, so I've got the bottom edge, bottom. Now I did actually press this on just a little bit here, just to give it a little, just to tack it down so that I wouldn't be moving on me while I was trying to show you these things. Okay, I've got my little iron. I like this little one because it's a little easier to handle when you're trying to press this stuff down. So then what we're going to do, you have to take the pressing cloth. Now be very careful. You've got vinyl and other stuff on this thing. So just be careful while we're pressing. And of course, we're going to use a pressing cloth. So I've just got my tea towel here, and I'm going to lay this down. And yes, this is going to cover up some of your buildings, but it's going to look like a snowdrift in front of them. Okay. So I'm just going to lay this down over I'm just going to do little chunks of it at a time. Okay. So we'll just do a little bit at a time here. This was a little awkward to do. So I'm just going to push this down over just a little bit of it. And I'm going to hold my little iron down, and just be careful. Just be aware that you've got other stuff on here. So kind of keep your iron. That's why I like the little one, because then the little iron doesn't get in the way. Okay. So let's see how we did there. If we got it pressed down, that looks pretty good. And you kind of have to make sure that you get it, attached at the bottom here. Now we are going to sew this also. So, but I'm just trying to keep it even on the bottom. Okay. So we're just going to move the towel up a little bit. I'm trying to stay down here at the bottom so that I'm not touching anything that might get hot. Okay. We're just going to move up a little bit. I'm putting a little pressure on it. Okay. And I'm going to move this down so you can see better. Okay. So there's the first part. And yes, it's going to show a little bit of like a wrinkle in here. Okay. So let's move this down so you can see a little bit. I'm going to pull this back so you can see. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to keep moving down, trying to keep the bottom lined up with the bottom. And I had a little tape up here, but it wasn't holding too well. So I was just trying to keep it from rolling up on me. It's kind of rolled, so I rolled it backwards just to kind of flatten it out a little bit for me. Okay, so let me get this next little section here. Whoops, second here. Got my towel kind of wrinkled. There. Just going to move my towel up and move my iron up. And you want to hold it about 20 seconds. Okay, so that it has a chance to melt a little bit. And like I said, we are going to be sewing through this too, so it looks pretty good. Okay. See if I can pull it down a little bit. And once it's all on, then you can go back and give it, that's what I plan to do, is I was just going to go back and give it a second press once I get it all kind of adhered so that it's not moving and scooting around on me. They do scoot around a little bit. So just remember though that there are some, vinyl windows and stuff on here. So just keep your iron, and that's why I use my little one. Okay. So that looks pretty good. So let's pull it down this way a little bit further. So hopefully you can still see. I'm trying to watch 2 cameras here. So, all right, let's pull it down this way. And then we got to go back this way a little ways. This was a little awkward because it was long and skinny and then it wanted to roll. But it does look cute when you're all done. So I thought it was a neat little touch they added here. This is something different. Okay, so there's that one. Let me go down a little further here. Okay, let's see here. And if you have, like I said, I just use like tea towels. This is a tea towel that I have a billion tea towels. My one grandmother loved to embroider tea towels, so I have lots of them. And they make wonderful pressing cloths. Okay, so let's keep going here. Getting close. Get down the other end here. So let's get it kind of laid flat. And then I'm going to lay my towel over it again. But just remember to use your pressing cloth. Okay, I need to back up this way a little ways. But this was fun. I enjoyed this pillow so much, and the blocks weren't quite as complicated as some of the bench pillows have been lately, and they just turned out so cute. And this really added. I love this little strip of vinyl at the bottom. I thought, hey, that's really cool. I like that. Okay, so we got to kind of back up here towards the beginning of the house here. Now watch, now this one I've got vinyl pretty low on it, so I'm going to be careful there. You don't want to burn that vinyl just melts something terrible. So you got to be careful with that. The glitter vinyls, as long as you're not touching it directly, don't really cause too much trouble, but man, that clear vinyl just melts like crazy. I've had to redo blocks because I melted the vinyl when I was pressing things. All right, so we're going to, oh, looks like Kathy and Orlin are here. Hello, everybody. Jackie's here, Anna's here. All right, second here. Gonna go ahead and press these, and like I said, I'm putting some pressure down on it because you have to put a little pressure. Just kind of working my way. We're almost to the end. Yeah, this was really a fun project. This has been one of my favorite. I think one of my favorite. Hi, Tony. This has been one of my favorite ones to do. This one was just, it was enjoyable because it wasn't real stressful. You know, it wasn't a real hard one. I remember when I did I really liked Twilight Boulevard, but oh my, it had so much in it that I was exhausted by the time I got 2 of those done. This one's a lot easier. And it was fun. All right, we're getting this one, we're almost to the end. Oh, people are running late. That's okay. We just started, so we're just kind of working on so this is what we're working on. We're working on putting the snowdrift on the bottom of the pillow here. And it's that big, long piece of glitter vinyl that came in the kit. And I have to say, I was glad that I didn't have to cut it. All of them. I cut one for Judy. It was not hard to cut, but you have to have a lot of glitter vinyl because we had to order like 4 feet of it because it's like 38 inches long or something. So you had to have quite a bit because it kind of comes by when you order it like in larger quantities, it comes by the foot. All right, so we're just about to the end here, and then we're going to just trim it off when we get to the other end. Okay, so let's see how we did here. But this little iron does work quite well for this. All right, get my scissors here and we'll trim the end off. I'm going to let it cool just a little bit. What do you think? I think we got it all on there. I might just go, I might go down the whole thing real quick just to give it a little more press, but I think it's okay. So we're going to trim this off. This stuff adheres pretty quickly. It's too bad you can't stick this in a heat press, but you just can't. Got too many other things on it. Okay, so now I can, since it's all adhered, now see, now I can lay my towel out. And I'm just going to go back down it again. since I have everything attached, then it's not scooting around on me. Okay, so we'll just do a little bit more here. Just go down it one more time, get my scissors out of the way. Pull this up. See, then I can put the towel along the whole bottom because it's you know, it's attached, so makes it a little easier so we can kind of give it a final little press here. Just watch those windows. This blue one has that real low window, so I want to make sure I stay down on that blue one because the blue one has this long window on it, or this low window on it. I think that's looking pretty good. And if it looks a little bit wrinkly, it's okay because it's going to look like a snowdrift. You know, I mean, it's going to look like there's, you know, snow isn't smooth always. It is sometimes kind of smooth, but we do see a fair amount of snow here, don't we? Okay, so I'm just going to keep going down the other end. Come out the other end down here. Looks like I got a piece of glue here that I keep melting. See if I can get it off. My towels get used and used and used. Okay, I bet some of these towels are 50 years old. I've had, you know, they were at mom's or at grandma's, or I have a lot of old towels. Okay, this covered up. So it's a lot easier once it's all, once it's all kind of attached, then you can kind of just move down. Yep, keep hitting that little piece of glue there. I'll have to get that off of that towel. Like a little piece of glue right there. All right, then we're going to hit the back. Okay, I think we're done. All right, so what do you think? So I'm going to lay my little iron over here. I think we might still need it. Laying on my desk. So we got the bottom on. They do last long. These towels, I have had these towels forever, and they do last, seem like they last a long time. Okay, so what do you think? So there's our little snowdrift all the way along the bottom. We got it all attached. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to move the camera back, and we have to stitch this. We're going to stitch it on. And this is like on page 26, you know, steps like, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is the top stitching part. Okay. So give me just a second to move my camera back over. So we may move the camera a couple times tonight. All right. So it says in step number 6, top stitch along the edge of the glitter shown in red. So basically what they did is they just stitched with white thread, and I've just got white Pima cotton thread. You could use embroidery thread if you wanted to. I just have my cotton thread in tonight, and I'm just going to kind of stitch maybe about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm trying to decide if I think I want to go this way. Okay. So I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch or less, you know, pretty close to the edge. So I've got the 2 little notches, you know, on my foot here. You know what? It does, doesn't it? Do you like the light? Okay, so we're going to do those too. I don't put the lights in. That is one of those Swarovski crystals. They are pretty. So that's what I'm going to put on mine instead of the lights. I don't care for the lights too much. They look kind of ugly when they're off. You know, they're just kind of, so I'm just going to stitch as close to the edge as I can through that glitter vinyl. And I'm just doing a straight stitch. You could do a zigzag, I suppose. So I'm just going to try to stitch as close as I can. I'm pretty close, maybe about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And just take your time. It'll take a minute to go around the second. In fact, I'm going to put my glasses on. Give me a second here. It's a little bit matchy, you know, with the So I've just got Pima cotton thread in my machine. And like I said, you could use embroidery thread. That would be okay too. You could have even used maybe you could have even used like a silver metallic thread would have been pretty. You could have done anything here just to give it a little bit more glitz. But this way we know it's going to stay on, and then we're going to sew this panel into the seam allowance. So we know it's not going anywhere. And if it wrinkles a little bit, you know, and it kind of pooks a little bit, that's okay, because that's what snow does, right? And it's not even all the time. So I'm just going along that little curve. Take your time. Hopefully everybody can see what I'm doing. I'm just kind of working my way up here. And you will be sewing, you know, through the bottoms of the houses and stuff. Okay, I'm trying to watch for comments. Oh, so somebody lost, huh, Jan? I don't watch football. I've never been a football fan. To me, football is what occurs on either side of the marching band show. I was in marching band, and then I was in marching band for 5 years in college, and then I taught marching band. I know how football works because I went to a lot of football games. All right, so I'm getting there. So I'm just kind of staying about 1/8 of an inch away. Best way for me to do this is just kind of eyeball it. And it doesn't really show much anyway, so. I thought about doing a zigzag originally, and I thought, you know, I might miss. So I just did the straight stitch like they said. All right, just a second here. Just about to the end. Okay, so we got it sewn on. So now it's to attach. Okay. Somebody, oh, yeah, that's right, Shannon. You're up around that area, aren't you? Okay, so what do you think? So there's our little snowdrift at the bottom of our pillow. It's all stitched on. It's pressed on. And if you feel like there's something that looks loose or something, there's a little spot right here that looks just a little bit loose. But you know, I don't know that it's going to matter because I'm going to sew through there. But that looks pretty good. So what do you think? And Jan was referring to the glitzy rhinestones on here. So I put these are Swarovski crystals. And so instead of putting the lights in the little eyelets, I put Swarovski crystals on. I'm going to show you how to put some on tonight. I left some empty here so you could see how to do them. I did some of them because it takes a little while because there's a whole bunch of them. So I did a few little things. As you can see, there's a few things on here. I did a few things in advance. So, okay. So I think we're ready to sew this together. So the next step, wherever my book went here, is to, we're going to do the inner borders. Oh yeah, there's lots of decorative stitches, Shannon. If you want to do a decorative stitch, please do. That would be fine. You could just do something. I wouldn't do anything too heavy just because some of the decorative stitches may want to skip a stitch when you're going through all that vinyl. That's why I just use the straight stitch, just because then I didn't have to worry about it. But something kind of more open would look nice, I think, along the top. So, and yes, I do like the crystals. I'm liking the crystals. So, okay, so now the next part is going to be we're going to put the borders on. Now remember, we've already quilted those. So in the instructions, it doesn't show any of the quilting. They're just putting it together, and then they quilt it like the last step on page 26 is actually like, you know, free motion quilting or something. So we've already done all the quilting. So I cut my borders down. So what I did is I measured, you know, my length of my panel here, my gray panel, my long gray panel, and it was 38 inches. So I cut my borders to 38 inches each. I want them to be the same length, so I cut them so I can go ahead and sew them on. So we're going to go ahead and sew. Let's go ahead and sew. Let's do the bottom one first. So I think when I did my original pillow, I put all of the little leaves pointing to the left. So let's do that. So this is going to go on here, down here, and I'm just going to turn it. And then I am going to pin this a little bit. It's hard to pin with the, through that. And you don't want to pin up too far with that glitter vinyl because you don't want it to show. You know, you don't want to pinhole it because the pinholes will show. So I'm just going to pin a few places, and I'm actually going to pin like this way and then take the pins out so that it won't show in my vinyl. I just need something to kind of hold this together a little bit so it doesn't scoot on me. Okay, so we're just going to kind of do a couple pins here. I'm just kind of pinning at the intersections of the, you know, where the blocks are put together. And then let's go down to the other end, make sure we get the length right here. But I'm kind of pinning, you know, horizontally instead of vertically because I don't want those pinholes to show in my vinyl. Okay. Then we'll just take the pins out. This way it'll be down in the seam allowance where they won't show the little holes because it will kind of show holes. Yeah, you could use clips too. Yes. Yes, I have a hard time. I use them, but I don't use them all the time. It seems like I'm always pulling them off. I spend most of my time, you know, because I pull them off. I don't know. So I still use pins. These are really sharp pins. So I usually use these. So we're going to go ahead and do this one. And I might go ahead and just pin, while I'm pinning, I'll just pin the second one on too. Let me pin the top one on too. And it's the same size. And I want my little leaves to go the same direction. So I'm going to go to the left with those as well. So I'm going to put this on. So this goes like this, and I want it to go like this then. So we'll go ahead and pin these on too. And we don't have to worry about these because there's no glitter vinyl on this one. Yep. Going to have it on the floor. This is so long. It's a little hard to work with. Now I don't have a another pillow form. We'll talk about the pillow form at the end. I don't have another one made because I'm giving this as a gift and they already have a pillow form. So I'm not going to make a pillow form for this one. But I'll talk you through the pillow forms. They're very easy. I make them out of muslin and fiberfill because it's kind of, you know, the only bad thing about the Kimberbell pillow forms is they're that, you know, that kind of synthetic thin stuff. And, you know, honestly, I'm always burning a hole in them or something, or I stick my fingers through them. So I usually make my own pillow forms. You can leave it off. It's going to make your houses look longer. So it does look good once you get it. It looks weird until you get it all put together. But no, that's fine, Jan. You could do that. You could also make it out of something else. You know, you could, instead of making it glitter vinyl, you could use something else there. That would be pretty and make it look like snow. You could use like fleece or something else along there, or felt. You could do anything. Okay, so now we're just going to stitch this together. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to go to my Q02. That's the 1/4 inch piecing stitch that I'm going to use my J foot on. So I'm going to go to Q02 and it moves the needle over, you know, to the right. And then I'm going to use the edge of my foot to give me my 1/4 inch. All right, so a second here. So it's kind of long. So, and we're going to do the bottom first so that that's all tied together. All right, get it lined up here. See if I can bring my second hand and grab my pin cushion so I can pull the pins and throw them up here. All right. Okay, so now we're going to sew our 1/4 inch seam. I'm still got my white, could be gray. I should have probably put the gray in, but the white, the other's white, so I just left the white thread in. My backing is a real pale gray, so Yeah, it does show through a little bit just because there's bulk underneath of it. So yeah. But yeah, if you would put like fabric there, like felt or you know, like felt or something that was like fuzzy or something instead of the glitter vinyl, it actually wouldn't show then. I mean, you know, it would just cover up the bottoms. Maybe you'd like that better. That'd be pretty. Because you could just stitch it on. Okay, so I'm just doing my 1/4 inch seam all the way down here. And my borders are darker than the original borders. I'll show you my original pillow. So my borders are quite a bit darker. My small ones. I was just kind of using the fabrics I had at home, so I didn't have exact fabrics. And most of them were pretty close, but all right, we're going through there. Now I may need to do this one's scooting a little bit on me, even though I pinned it, but we may have to trim just a little bit off the end. Looks like I'm going to pook a little bit at the end, so we may trim a little bit, but that's okay. Sometimes it happens. But I did trim off my borders to 38 inches. So I just measured that gray panel. I'm just going to tie off when I get down here at the end. Yeah, I think the felt would be pretty, or like you could use glitter felt. You know, you could use felt that has like a glittery thing to it, and then it would still give you that glitter without being adhered. So that would be pretty. Okay, so let's turn this over and do the other side here. Just stab myself again. All right. Do the same thing, 1/4 inch seam here. I'll go ahead and stitch. Yeah, because they make that felt with the glitter in it. That'd be really pretty. Because you can buy it by the yard. You'd have to have long, you know, a long piece, not just like a small, you know, like the sheets. You'd have to buy like a yardage of it because you'd need a pretty good size piece of it because of it being all in one piece. But that'd be pretty, and then it wouldn't show. See, then the felt would just cover up the bottom of the houses. All right. Second here, I'm running into stuff. Colored vinyl, that would be fine. It's hard to find colored vinyl though. Kimberbell has greens and pinks, like some blues, but they don't have a ton, so there's not a ton of colors. They don't have any like yellow. Yellow would be pretty because it looked like you know, like lights shining through the windows. I think they have mostly greens and blues and pinks. And then the clear, of course. Oh, I would measure the length of your, you know, after you have your borders all quilted and everything, measure the length of the gray section after you sew it together. That's how I got the 38 inches. Okay, because I measured mine to make sure. Now mine just a little bit, it must have been just a smidgen under 38 because I noticed that mine's just a little gappy. So I'll probably have to trim just a teeny bit off the end. And that's okay. Because it looks like they're going to come out about still the same length. I just like to start with them the same exact length because then I know I'm at least close. Same thing when you put, you know, borders on quilts. So yeah, it looks like I'm going to be about 1/8 of an inch off on both sides. So that's fine. All right. So come down here. We're going to tie off. And then I'm going to go press this. So give me a second. I want to press these seams just so they're flatter. So when we go to do the next section, it's easier. Okay. So I like to open these seams up. They're kind of bulky. So I like to open them up and lay them flat when I do this. Okay. So I'm going to go just press this. I've got my big iron over here going. It's just easier for me over here. Gonna have to let my iron warm up. I thought I had wiggled it, but I haven't. So let me talk a little bit about the other borders while my iron is heating up quick. These borders, these are the bigger, wider borders, okay? So the next step in here, of course, says to sew them together. Well, we already had them sewed together because we quilted them already. But you do need to measure them and find the center. And then also, after we measured our, my gray panel in the center, the bigger panel, it was 38 inches. So what I ended up doing with these is I found the center of them and then I cut it off a little bit on both ends. You want to make sure you cut them off a little bit on both ends so the blocks don't look like a weird size at the ends. Okay. So just cut off, I had to cut off maybe 1/8 of an inch or so on each end to make them my 38. Okay. And you may not have to, because depending on how big your center panel is, you may not have to cut any off. Mine were a little bit long, so I just cut them off, but I cut a little teeny bit off on each end. Okay. So let me go see if my iron's warm. Now I can iron my borders. I don't know any other way this besides just to get up and iron when I have to. Sometimes it's hard. I don't like to keep going and not have the borders ironed down. So sometimes I just have to do it. And I'm opening these flat. Got the top one. Now the bottom one, I am going to lay this one flat. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the bottom one. Since that glitter vinyl's in there, I don't want to iron on that. So I am just going to turn this one like this. It'll be okay. It's a little bulky, and I'm going to press it from the top, but you're going to need a pressing cloth because you don't want to touch this vinyl, okay? And if I open this up, I'm afraid, well, it might be okay. Let me see if it'll open for me. I think I did open the other one. I might have used a pressing cloth because you might melt your vinyl, and you don't want to do that. So I think I used a pressing cloth on this. And I did open it up. I'm pretty sure I did. It's kind of, well, I don't know. When I get to the houses and stuff, I think I'm going to leave it this way. I'm going to press it from the front, and I'm going to use a pressing cloth here, okay? And I'm just going to leave these flat like this. Remember, I had a hard time deciding then also how to do it. So give me a minute. I got to get my pressing cloth here. Makes it harder with the pressing cloth, but I think this is how I did it. I like to open these when they're bulky because it just makes it lay flatter, but with that vinyl in there, it kind of is different. It's not a normal seam. It's working though. Okay. All right. So what do you think? There are our short borders. There are short borders, and let's see. See, I am a little off on this one over here. So I think I'm going to trim this a little real quick. And I might be a little off down here on the one. Yeah, see, I was about 1/8 of an inch off on both of them. So I'm just going to trim those off so that they're flat. This is so long, it's hard to work on the small mat. So I'll work on this bigger one over here. I kind of like that darker blue-green in there. Okay. That looks better. Okay. So what do you think? That look nice? So there's our, and I even managed to get them both going the same way. So you don't have to. You could, like end for end them if you wanted to. But I left mine both the same way. Okay. So then the next step is going to be, of course, the larger borders. So we're going to put those on, and I already measured those. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. Where does this end up being? I'm going to kind of fold this in half and find the center just so that I have an idea where the center of the border is to make sure they're pretty centered. The blocks would look a little weird if you got it kind of off center. So I'm just going to fold this in half. So it's right in the tree block here. And then let me see. I had mine, I have to look at my pattern. I think I had mine with the green. This is the bottom border. I think this is the top one. Let me see. I think this is the top one. Because it had the green on both ends. Yeah, this is the top one. So we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and fold this in half too. I think it goes this way, looking at my pillow. So we're going to go ahead and fold this. Yeah, I really like this blue. It's a little bit more vibrant. The other one's a little bit more green, actually. This one's more blue. So we're going to fold this in half too. I just want to kind of make sure I get this kind of centered here. Let's see. It's going to go like this. So I want to fold it and pin it on the bottom. There we go. So we're going to pin it down here. So I'm just folding it so I can kind of get it even. That way the blocks on the ends are going to be just slightly narrower anyway, just because of the way, you had to cut it off just a little bit. So I want to make sure it's fairly centered looking on the pillow. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pin. Here's my centers. I'll pin there. And then I'm going to, oh yeah, the bottom looks way better. Yeah, I mean, once you put that on, I think it looks fine, Jan. But I like the idea maybe of the felt with the glitter in it. That would be pretty. Okay, so then we're going to get our, oops, gotta find my pins again. Now I may switch over to my gray thread now just because this is all kind of, I think I need a little more neutral thread than the white. So the back of mine is gray. So I was planning to use gray thread. I'll go ahead and switch the thread once I get this pinned on. We'll pin both of them and we can sew them both at the same time. This part didn't take too long. This one had a lot of embellishments. All right. So let's see if I got it pretty straight. Looks pretty good. So I'm hoping that I don't get it all pooky. That's my technical term. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so let's turn the border over and do the other side. And I think this one, I have to turn my, see, I think this one goes like, I had it like this. And the stripy ones, yeah, on this end over here. So we'll do this. This will be the bottom border. Kind of fold it in half. So we know where that is. You don't have to, you know, the outside ones are not too different. And then let's fold it down here, this part. Whoop, there goes my pens again. I spend most of my life looking for the scissors and the pins. Okay, there we go. There's this one. So there's my center, my block. And then we'll pin this on. So this one, let's see, this is the way I want it. I want the block, the stripe block on the right side. Okay, so we put this then, like this. So I did put a few of the buttons and stuff on last night just so that I had some of the embellishments on it. It takes a while. I'm just going to tell you, you know, it's going to take you a while to put the embellishments on this one because it is got a lot of little things. And I wanted to show you some of the fun stuff that I did with the embellishments instead of just, you know, sewing buttons on, because I think we all know how to do that. You can do that with the sewing machine. My big buttons I sewed on with the sewing machine. I've done that before. I might sew a couple buttons on for you tonight if you want me to. And the bow, I wanted to show you the bow maker. Some of you haven't seen my cool bow maker that my friend Orlin makes for me. And they work really well if you can't tie bows. So I tied all my bows with my bow maker. So we'll tie a bow tonight with the bow maker. All right. Get through here. That looks pretty good. Borders are going on pretty good. Then I am going to switch over to my gray thread, I think, though. I like a little bit more neutral thread with this darker color. I knew I needed to start with the white because of the white snow. All right, so we'll switch the thread real quick. Oh, yeah, the fabric. Yeah, the other thing I look for, Shannon, is my scissors. I'm constantly looking for scissors. My cat likes to shove things underneath the sewing machine with her foot. So she's always shoving stuff underneath things. And she'll come out here and she doesn't really bother anything, but if I'm using it, then she wants to play with it. All right. Gotta find where'd the gray bobbin? There's the gray bobbin. Here's the gray thread. All right. Sew these on. Okay. So this is my gray Pima cotton thread. Works better for neutrals. All right, so then we're going to sew this one on. Again, I'm going to use that Q02, 1/4 inch seam here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get a little bit closer. Drop my needle. I'm going to take a stitch and I'm going to tie it on. All right, off we go. I might leave my pins in so things don't scooch. These are the only pins I can do this with. We've talked about this many times. Don't drive over anything but these little magic pins. They're so soft and thin. If you drive over a standard pin, you're going to have the timing off on your machine all the time. I don't buy pins. These are the only pins I buy now. They're so sharp. If I go to like Joann's and buy pins, they're so dull that it feels like I'm pushing a log through my quilt or whatever I'm working on. They're so dull. Okay. Second here, I got kind of a little spot here. That's weird. There we go. Get this all lined up. But you notice even with these, I don't drive over anything very fast. But sometimes things just scoot too much, and I could have put a walking foot on, I normally don't need one. These machines really feed well. You know, they feed super, super well. So I don't use a walking foot like I used to with the older machines. Looks pretty good. I'm stabbing myself on my elbow. So how many people are sewing along? Or a bunch of you? I know people have been putting pictures up, so I know some of you are sewing along with me. This is a really fun project. I can't wait to see yours. Everybody, it's so fun to see what people do for different colors and stuff. If they didn't have kits, you know, it's just so fun to see what people do for colors. Oh, you, Shannon, you have a helper too, but yours is a child instead of a cat, huh? Yeah, my cat, she actually is not bothering me tonight. Some nights she likes to be out here when I'm sewing, and sometimes she just doesn't bother me at all, and she doesn't really bother stuff. This is the first cat I've had in a very, very, very long time that didn't bother anything. My Mandy didn't bother anything either, and all of my other cats did. I mean, it was like I had a child-proof my whole house because one of my cats liked to chew cords, so her favorite thing was like any computer cord, like the cords on your, when we had desktops with all the keyboards and everything. Oh my gosh. I was constantly having to buy new keyboards, new mice, because she chewed the cords. So I finally found those cord protector things, you could put over the cords to keep her from chewing them. It was just awful. It was getting so expensive because I was replacing, and that was when, before we had wireless stuff. So I was constantly having to repurchase stuff because she would chew it. And I'm surprised the cat lived to be 19 because I would have thought she chewed through power cords too. So I'm surprised she didn't electrocute herself. But she never did. She lived to be 19. So amazingly enough. All right. See how I'm doing here. Getting through here. This is going to be so cute. I can't wait to get it done. I like the backing. I used some of the backing from the We Whisk You a Merry Christmas because I had a big piece of that left that was big enough for the backing. So this, my original one was a different backing. I can't remember what I used. I think I just used something I had at home from Walmart or something because I use a bigger backing, so when we get to the backing here in a few minutes, I'll tell you the dimensions because they only give you in the kits a half a yard. And yeah, somebody said that's a pretty long cat life. It is. All of my cats have lived to be 19. And Gigi's only, let's see, how old is she? 13. So I expect to have her for a few years yet. She's only 13. She's the young one. All the other cats were quite a lot older than she. Okay, so now there is our big borders. We're getting done, almost done here. So now we're going to do some, before we put the thing together, we are going to do some of the, I usually don't put these together and I usually do the embellishments after it's all the backs on, but there's so many things on this. I did this one before I put the back on. So I'm going to go ahead and run over here and open these seams up, okay, just so that they're flat. And this one you don't need the pressing cloth for. I just stabbed myself again. So these work pretty well, but these heavy seams, when they're open, they just lay flatter. So I usually try to open them. And I normally do my embellishments after the pillow is in it, just because I like to know where things are. But this one had so many, it was kind of hard to get all those buttons and everything on there. So I did these before I put the back on. which is unusual for me. I usually do it at the end, but. All right, just about got one done here, and I'll get the second one. This is going to be so cute. So how is everybody liking the clear blue tiles and doing the quilting in the hoop? Do you like that? The block by block quilting like we did in this one. Do you like the Kimberbell quilting designs? I kind of like them. I'm getting there. I'm coming. Okay. And this one has such cute buttons on it too. All these really cute buttons. So. Okay. I like them too. I like the quilting in the hoop. I have to say, I normally with my quilts though, I like to quilt them through all the layers. So I don't normally use the block by block method for the quilts. I'd rather quilt them through. So what do you think? So what do you think so far? Is that looking good? Okay, so we're going to be doing the back here in a minute, but let's go on to embellishments for a little bit, and then we'll do the back end. Okay. So I normally don't do all of this on my sewing machine, but this is where the camera is. So we're gonna work with the camera here. So the embellishments start. So this is also, if you're gonna put the lights in, this is where you would want to start putting your lights in. And I did put the lights in. If there's a video with the Twilight Boulevard pillow that I put the lights in, and I believe I put the lights in before I put the back on it for that as well. They had you put them in after the back was on, and it was very hard. So I pulled the back off and put them on that way. So I would, if you want to put the lights in, go ahead and watch that video because I did go through it, and I found a couple little tricks to help me keep them in place by using some tape. But what we're going to do, so let's start at the beginning of the embellishments. Okay, so the first thing it talks about is the lights, which is on page 27. And you have to kind of poke a hole where those eyelets are. So I've got the eyelets right here. Okay, so you've got to poke holes there, and you're going to string those lights one light at a time. Leave the little battery pack over on the ends from each end, and then you're going to kind of work your lights across. Okay. But I don't like the lights too well because when they're not lit up, they're actually kind of ugly. You know, they're just kind of not real pretty. So I started putting in my crystals. So I'm going to show you that next, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I did with the ribbons. So there's a couple of ribbons on here. So we know we've got our little fringy, our little fringe wreaths here. So you put a little ribbon. There was some skinny ribbon to put there. And then there's one on each end. Okay, so here's the one on the other end. Okay, so I put two little ribbons, but I wanted to show you how I tied those. I have and then there's a ribbon for the top of the tree that makes like a little bow at the top of the tree. Now I have a really hard time tying ribbons. So I wanted to show you my little gadget here. I've been making porcelain dolls for many, many years. And one of my friends made me a bow maker years ago, and now Orland's been making them for people. So if you want a bow maker, they're on my website. Okay, so the sew-along-with-jan.square.site, and you can get this bow maker. So so what I do with the bow makers, it's got these little posts in here. Okay, and I cannot tie bows. So the front of the bow is back here. All right, just so you know, we're working from the back. And I'm just going to do a single bow. And you can wrap it around more times if you want. I just need a single one. I'm not sure. Might need to make this. No, I think this is going to be okay. You can kind of make them different widths by going, further apart. But let's try this. So I think this will be okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I need a little longer piece on the end here. So I'm going to pull this one up a little bit, and I'm going to swing this around so that I make like a cross, and then I'm going to push this end underneath. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it across the back from the back, and then I'm going to tie a knot. So this ribbon is one-sided, so you kind of have to turn this one so that it will be pretty, you know, your knot will be pretty on both sides. So sometimes I have to fiddle with it a little bit at the end. So I'm just going to tie a knot with this bow. I love this bow maker. I could never make bows. And so, you know, we made bows for all the dolls' hair and everything. So the trick is you want, you know, the bad side of the ribbon towards you when you're tying your knot tight. And you're going to tie your knot tight like this. Okay, and you just tie it tight. And then I'm going to pull this off. And then you've got a perfect ribbon. And the knot on the front is going to be the pretty side, not the ugly side. So if you just try to tie it in your fingers, it usually ends up with the ugly side in the knot, you know, and not like this. So this is a different type of, you know, it's like having extra fingers holding the knot for you, or the ribbon for you. Okay. So I'm just going to tighten it up just a little bit. Okay. And that's how I tied my ribbons. Even this little skinny ribbon works really well that way. Okay. I think these are on my website for like $20, and you get several different sizes of like posts. These are the little skinny ones, and then there's some medium ones, and I think there's some big ones like this. So that you can do real big ribbons. And sometimes I wrap them around. I did a whole bow video, just like a 10 or 15 minute bow video. So if you've never seen one of these before, just go to my YouTube channel and just look for bow maker or bow video, and you'll find it. And then you can just watch me make bows for 10 or 15 minutes. And sometimes you want to like wrap it around several times, and then you have multiple you know, sided bows, and they're really pretty. That's what I put in my doll's hair and stuff. So, but this one I just wanted one. That looks pretty good. I'm just trying to make sure it's even. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead, and this one I'm actually just going to hot glue on. So like I said, I normally don't hot glue on my machine, but it'll be okay for this. We got batting in there. It should be fine. Did the ribbon come in the embellishment kit? Yes, it did. It's kind of a velvet ribbon. Yep. And then the little skinny ribbon did too. Okay, so that's all on the embellishment kit. So then I'm going to put this up here on the top of the tree, and we'll cut those little things off. But I'm just going to hot glue that on. You could sew it on if you want. I don't like to sew stuff like that on. So I'm just going to hot glue it on. Put some hot glue on the back here. And then we'll put it at the top of the tree. Push it down. Okay, and then we'll trim this off. So that was the first part of the embellishments they talked a little bit about, you know, was the ribbons. Okay. And the bow maker is something, I mean, if you've never seen those, I mean, I've had one for years and years because I make dolls. And that's who originally I got one from, was my doll making friends. Because we made so many bows, and it was so, you know, I just couldn't make bows, just no matter what I did. So then I'm just going to trim this off a little bit so it's not so long. Kind of do it at an angle here. There we go. Okay, so there's our ribbon. So I got our little velvet ribbon on there. That looks cute. Okay. All right, on the top of the tree. So that was the first little part of the embellishments. And then it talked about the little buttons. And the button, do you want me to sew a button on with the machine? Does everybody want to see that again? I will be happy to do that because we need to sew a couple buttons on. This is the little snowman, and the little snowman goes here. He's going to sit. See, he had to wait to be put on because he needed to sit on the snow out here. Okay. And then this one, so I did do some of the buttons early. So let me just pull this down so you can see. So here's the buttons. The little cocoa cups go on the cocoa stand, and then there's a snowflake up here, and then one of the big snowflake goes on the house. Okay, the red house, and then There was another snowflake in that button pack over here. And then there's two other buttons, and that was the pack of buttons that was in there. And this is the little penguin. So the penguin goes, I think he was down like under the little lamppost over here. So he needed to stand on the snow. So we needed to sew him on last. So if you want me to show you how to sew a button on with the machine, I will. I think some of you have seen that. And sometimes I do them by hand. So you could do them either way. But he's going to go here. So put some thumbs ups or something if you want me to sew the buttons on. I can do that. It doesn't take long. So there's a little foot, you know. I just call it the sew the button on foot. And we are going to, yeah, so let's do that. So let me grab my white thread again. And we'll put the gray back on. It's okay. We got time. It's kind of fun to do the embellishments because this is the part that, you know, a lot of people, you know, this is kind of, to me, this is the hardest part of doing these, is getting the embellishments on, I think, because I'm not very good at it. So I kind of look at the pictures, you know, to get me, you know, in the right spots and stuff. So we'll sew the buttons on. Get my white thread. I like to sew buttons on with the machine. I don't like to sew them on with my hand. Now the little teeny tiny ones in the tree, I'll show you those. I did do those by hand just because they are so small. And it's so hard to get the foot to hang on to them because they're so little. So I did actually sew these on by hand, these little ones that look like the little ornaments on the tree. Okay, so those I sewed on by hand. I don't like to sew by hand, but I do sometimes. Okay, so I got to find my foot just a second. I got to grab my foot. All right, so this is the M foot. And this is, well, I think they call it the button foot or something. I just call it the sew the button on foot. Okay, so we're going to take the J foot off. We're going to put the M foot on. And the M foot has a couple of little things. It has this little doohickey that kind of pushes back and forth. So if you want the shank to be looser so that you can get a button, like a thicker piece of fabric through it, you want to push this little plastic thing forward. And I want it back because I want it to be tighter against my pillow. Okay, so I'm going to push it backwards. I'm going to put this button on. And sometimes I even put the button in the button foot before I put it on. So let's see how these go here. We'll see how that works. All right. So we want, let's see, the little penguin guy is going to go over here by the lamppost. So we got to kind of turn him this way so that he'll fit in the buttonhole foot. So if you look here, most buttons have the same distance between their holes. Okay. And if you look on the foot, you can probably see, I don't know if you can see very well. Let me see, get a little closer. There's two little red dots, and that's where the needle's going to come down. So, okay, so I'm going to go get my button foot or my button stitch, and it is where your buttonholes are on your machine. Most of the machines have this stitch, and it's on my tab number 4 where the buttonholes are. So just look for your buttonholes, and it's going to be on mine. It's 423. So this is the sew the button on stitch. And it tells me to put the M foot on. So basically what it is a bar tack. So it's not moving, and it drops your feed dogs. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put my little guy kind of where I want him. I think I want him around here. So we're going to put him in this foot. Let's see. There's a little spring down here, and the button goes in between that to kind of hold it. And then you kind of move it where you want it and put the foot down. Okay. And I am going to use my hand wheel, which is an unusual thing for me, and make sure that I got it so I'm not going to hit the button. Now, Tim just starts sewing, but I like to test it first. Okay. So I'm going to touch that button one more time. Because remember, that'll take me back to the beginning of that stitch. Okay. Because if I touch it again, it's going to start at the stitch. Okay. So we're going to slowly stitch this, and it's going to go back and forth between the two holes. Okay. quite a few times. It goes back and forth, and then it ties off, and then it stops, and the button is sewn on. So I'm going to pull towards me to get it out of there. I've got a little bit of a tail that we can trim off. And if you don't like it, if it's not tight enough, sew it again. Okay, so there's one. Okay, I love this little buttonhole thing. All right, and then let's see, the little snowman goes over here by the red house. Let's pull this forward here. Goes over here by the red house, between the red house and the tree, and it was kind of on the seam line. Okay, so we're going to put him in this vicinity. So again, I'm going to put him in the buttonhole attachment, the little buttonhole foot, and I'm going to line it up with those little red polka dots. Okay, and then I'm going to get him about where I want him, and I'm going to put the foot down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use my hand wheel again and make sure that I got it in the right spot. I'm always afraid I'm going to hit the button, so I always test it. Okay, I'm going to hit that same 423 again, so it'll start at the beginning. Okay, then I'm going to use my foot controller. I'm just going to slowly, and then when it goes through it several times, and then it's just going to go tie a knot. It goes up and down and ties a knot at the end. And then you cut it off. So there's our buttons, and I'm going to pull towards me to get it out of the little foot. Okay, there we go. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. All right, so there's our little snowman. Now these were a little tall, so as I remember when I got all done, I think I put a little dab of hot glue under his head just so he wouldn't turn on me. And then the same thing with the little penguin. I think he wanted to turn a little bit, so I just lifted him up and stuck a little hot glue under his head just to keep him from moving. Okay, so there's our little buttons on there. So all the little buttons are on. All my snowflakes are on. Okay, and my little cups are on. So all the snowflakes. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about. Oh yeah, the buttons are kind of fun though, Shannon. just look at just put the foot on and you'll figure it out. It's not hard to figure out. They're very easy. Okay, so I'm going to take this foot off and we're going to put the J foot back on because I'll need that here in a minute. We'll probably switch back to the gray thread here in a second, but let's go ahead and look at these rhinestones. These are actually Swarovski crystals, so they are very pretty, and that's why. Yes, the M foot comes with most of the machines. So if you go back, Cindy, and look at one of my videos from Shields Live, I did a video called All Those Feet. And I went through all the feet that come with almost all of the Brother Baby Lock machines, and the M foot was one of them. So that would help you go through just your basic sewing feet. Okay, so I talk about it in there too. So that's a good one to go through. Okay, so I have put on all of these little Swarovski crystals. So there's 2 here. So everywhere there was an eyelet. Okay, let me turn the camera a little bit. Every place there's an eyelet, I put a little Swarovski crystal. If you were going to use the lights, that's where you would make the holes through the eyelets and then poke your lights up through there. Okay, but I just use the eyelets to help me. So what I bought was Swarovski crystals. If you give me a second here, I've got my little crystals and stuff over here. These are 4mm crystals. So in other words, in crystal world, they're called SS16s. Those are the ones that seem to fit the little hole areas the best. So I just that's what I bought. Okay, and these are Swarovskis, so they're hot fix. And so that means we're going to use this cool little tool. It's one of these little hot fix tools. And we have these in our store. I don't think I have them on the website, but I love these because if you just need to put a few rhinestones on, this is the one that plugs in. These get hot. I don't always have good luck with the battery operated ones. So I love this one. So what I do with this is I have a tile, and I use these for my doll painting too. but this was going to protect my machine. And I always use this under when I'm doing this because it's hard. And then you can press down on your rhinestone. Okay. So I'm just going to pull this forward. Like I said, I normally don't do this on my machine, but this is where the camera is right now. So I've got this little cool thing on the end. It's just kind of a flat one. I like these because then they don't stick to the rhinestones. And I've got my little Swarovskis here. And I'm just going to grab one and put it in my little eyelet area with the glue side down. And these are Aurora Borealis ones. So that's why they twinkle so, because they kind of have different colors in them. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little tool, and it's very hot. It's been on, so it's hot. And I'm going to push down, straight down, and put some pressure on it and hold it there for maybe about 15 seconds or so. And it melts the glue that's on the back of that rhinestone. And I'm going to do the next one. Okay, now be careful if you've got vinyl or something around there, because you don't want to melt that with the little rhinestone thing. Now this one happens to be the Jenny Haskins one. I've had this one for years, but we've got a different brand in the store, and those are really nice. They're, I don't know, $30 or something. I mean, they're $25, $30. They're not really expensive, but, and they last forever. I mean, I've had this probably 15 years, and I just use it when I need to put some rhinestones on. So I put this one on, and I'm putting quite a lot of pressure on it. Okay, it can, but what you want to do is when you're using it, try to press straight down, and see the rhinestone kind of keeps it from going down into your threads. So just be careful. Now I've got some, second here, I've got this one sticking. I've got some vinyl up here, so I'm going to have to be careful with this one. I don't want to touch my vinyl, so I'm going to be kind of careful with this one. I'm trying to pull it up towards me a little bit. But if you don't, because the rhinestone is going to hold it up from the thread, and yes, you can burn your thread. I'm not telling you can't, but if you're just careful, it'll be fine. And the polyester thread doesn't take heat quite as well as rayon thread does, but if you're just careful and not hold it there too long, you won't have any trouble. Okay, so we're going to put this one on. Now, Swarovskis are a little more expensive than rhinestones, so you can just buy the regular rhinestones. Where did you get the rhinestones? I got these from Brewer, and I'm trying to get them, but they've been out of them for a while. I've had these for a while, so I'll try to order some for the store, because I wanted to have some just basic ones at the store to go with the little rhinestone things. I've got the tools, but the rhinestones have been hard. I think sometimes Hobby Lobby and Michael's has them too, so you might be able to find them there. And then I also buy rhinestones. They don't have the Swarovskis, but I buy rhinestones from Specialty Graphics. And I've got rhinestones. So my original one just had rhinestones because I didn't have the Swarovskis, but I got Swarovskis this time to put on this one. Okay, so there's that one. And so I've got all of them on. So I'll show you all my little blocks with these on. I put a bunch of them on because they take a while. So, but I always put this ceramic plate underneath. So then I have something hard to press against, and that really helps. So instead of going against something soft, put something hard underneath, like one of these ceramic tiles. It's just a ceramic tile is all it is. And I just keep it for this hot stuff. Okay. Those look pretty good. I think I got them good. So this one had, the little rhinestones up and down the top. Will fabric glue work for the crystals? Yes, you could do fabric glue also if you buy the crystals that do not have hot fix. I don't like fabric glue because I have it all over everything. So you can try. That would be fine. These are pretty small though. So, okay. So let me show you then. I'm going to turn this off so it'll cool off because it gets really hot. Okay. So I'll show you the other ones. I'm just going to lay this up here on my table, get it out of my way so I won't burn myself. Okay. So here's all of the other blocks that have those on. So I started with the lamp posts. There's 2 on the lamp posts, and then there's some across the top of the brown house. And here's the blue house that we just did. So up and down. And then the Christmas tree has them like all over. So just put them where the little eyelets are. That helps me. So there's a whole bunch of them on the tree. And then I sewed all the little red buttons on the tree. And I just kind of looked at the picture in the book to see kind of where they put the buttons. You can put them anywhere you want. And then the pink house has the rhinestones. Let me see if I can get it over a little further. The pink house has them all along the roof here, and then along the top of the little porch roof. And then the cocoa stand has them all along. And get a little further over here. Have to watch the foot. They're all along like where the second, let me take this off so that the little button will go underneath there. There we go. Where they go down along where the little strings are here. Okay. And then the last one, the little lamp posts again. So here's all of our little rhinestones. So I put all of those on. And I think I might actually, with these little cups too, I might pull them up a little bit. I sewed them on, but I might pull it up and stick a little hot glue under there just so they won't rotate so much, because the buttons are big and kind of tall and they like to move. So, all right. So there is all of those little embellishments on there. And I really like the crystals because then they look pretty all the time. Oh, these are real small. So I don't like to sew either, Shannon, but when they're little like this, it's really hard to hot glue them because there's not enough glue that they often come off on me. So I usually sew the little teeny buttons. They are pretty small. So I did sew them on, but I don't like to sew them on either. Okay. All right. So that's all of the little embellishment. It goes through all the little embellishments on page 27. It talks about, where to put them. They're all listed here, where to put the little cozy buttons and everything. And it tells you where to put them all. Okay. So now we're to the backing. So I do my backing just a little bit differently than they call for it. I like the overlap in the back to be wider. So I'm going to go ahead and put my gray thread back in. So give me a second here. I just threw it on the floor. So let me put my gray thread back in since my backing is gray. Second here. I want to give those rhinestones a chance to cool just a little bit before I put them. Yep, I've got thread all over the floor now. There we go. Before I start sewing on this. So give it just a little bit to cool a little bit, and then put my gray in. So I want my backing to be, I like the overlaps to be longer because the way they do their backing, they use a half a yard. And so when they overlap in the back, they're so they don't overlap far enough. So then everything kind of pooks open, it kind of gaps open. So I actually use 1 yard of backing. You don't have to use a whole yard. If you have a half yard and a fat quarter, that's enough to do it. So I always just tell everybody to buy a yard of your backing fabric. You'll have some left over, but I like to do that better. Okay, so what I do then is the middle section needs to be wider. So what they do normally is a half a yard, and they take 2 10-inch pieces off the end and then leave the center. So then the center is only going to be about 24 or less. So 22, it depends on how wide your fabric is. I like my center to be 28 inches. So that's the different measurement. And then that's why I can't get both 10-inch pieces for the ends. So this is a 3-piece back. It's way easier to get your pillow in and out too, because that pillow's so long, it's way easier to get it in and out. So I use a 28-inch piece. So now I'm going to have to measure this now. I've cut mine 17 inches tall, but it's possible that they're going to be it's going to need to be cut off. So if you give me a second here, I'm going to measure this. So you always have to measure your pillow. Let's see how wide we ended up being here. So see, it only ended up being about just a hair over 16. 16 and about, 16 and about, not quite a quarter, so about an eighth actually. You measure it down here. So I'm going to go cut my backing off a little bit. So yeah, 16 and an eighth. So I'm actually going to cut my pieces off here just a little bit before I put them on. All right, so I've got my 28-inch piece here. And I actually pre-hemmed mine. You know, you hem on each raw edge, the short side. But I am going to go trim these off because they're going to be a little too wide. And then here's my two 10-inch pieces. And then I hemmed these as well. So this is the backing that I used on Ginger's Kitchen. No, not Ginger's Kitchen. Yeah, We Whisk You Merry Christmas. We Whisk You Merry Christmas quilt. Let me just trim these off. So we said 16 and an eighth. You need to come off a little bit. I knew they probably would be a little wide, but I just cut them and then I figured I could trim them down a little bit if I needed to, since I didn't have my pillow put together. So about 16 and an eighth. Okay. So the best way to do this, just wait till your pillow's all put together and then cut your backs. I didn't do that because I was, doing some pre-sewing. So 16 and an eighth. So got that one. So here's this piece. Let me get my two little pieces done. You do those together, they're short. 16 and an eighth. So everybody's pillow may be just a little bit different size. Mine's going to be perfectly fine. 16 and an eighth. Okay. I think I went through the end here, so there we go. Okay. So here's my pieces. So when we do this back then, and of course, it shows here in this picture that you're hemming, the short side on the two short little ends and then the middle section. Okay, so this section's 28 inches and these two end pieces are 10 by whatever the height of your pillow is. So mine was 16 and an eighth. So you'll just need to measure your pillow to know how tall to make it. Okay. So then we're going to place the back two pieces right side down first. So that's the thing I always have to remember is the little ends go on first. So we're going to put those on the ends. Give me a second here. And we're going to match up, as usual, we're going to match up the raw edges and put the hemmed part towards the inside. So I'm just going to lay this on here and then we'll put these on. So we've done a few of these backs before, but I like to do them with the longer center because otherwise they gap open and I just don't like that gapping part. So I always make it longer and I just use a little more fabric. So it actually works quite well with the, with a half yard plus a fat quarter. So if you just have like a half yard and a scrap, or about a fat quarter size scrap, that'll work just fine. Because that's what I did here is I had a fat quarter and I had a half yard of this left to do this. All right, so we're just going to pin these. And then we're going to do the other side. Right sides together, of course, because we're just going to turn this right side out. Okay, we can do the other end. Let's flip it over this way. So we can do the other end. It's hard to do this on the sewing machine. I don't have my camera so I can get to the ironing board tonight, so we'll have to just do it on the machine here. We'll get it. Grabbing my pins. Okay, but these 3-piece backs work way better. So we did one of these on Gather Together when we did Gather Together too. These just work so much. I mean, originally I think they did the 3-piece back to do the lights. So the older ones were all like 2-piece backs, but you had to push the pillow into the whole thing. It was so hard to get it in and out because it's so long. You know, it's like 38 inches long. So I really like doing these 3-piece backs. It's just easier to get things in and out. Because you just turn the ends at the end and pull the pillow through, and it's way easier. Okay, so my 16 1/8 looks really good. So my width is good. Okay, get this one, and then we're going to put the center in. So now we have to kind of know where the center is. We want to kind of center this. So I don't normally eyeball it. I usually fold my pillow in half and make sure I know where the center is. So I'm just going to fold this in half. I'll pull this back a little bit. I'm just folding this in half, and I'm just going to mark the center and the top and the bottom. Like I said, I usually do this on my ironing table or on my cutting table. So do this part 2. I like to lay it out flat, so it's a little easier than doing it here, but this will work. And then I'm going to lay this open. And then we're going to find the center of our big piece of the back. Do the same thing. I'm just going to fold it in half and put a pin there so I know where my centers are. And then I can kind of make sure that it's pretty even, both sides. I really love this backing. I don't know that I used this on my We Whiskey You Merry Christmas. I can't remember if I actually had this fabric. I might not have had it. I know I did the kits with it when I got some kits for people. And we had a little bit left, so I had a chunk left. Okay, so now I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to match up my center seams, my center marks on the top and the bottom. We're just going to pin this in here. Okay, and then we're going to start pinning across the bottom. Okay, and I always want to know where the overlaps are, so I always put a pin for sure where the overlap is. And see, they're going to overlap 3 or 4 inches or so. And that's why I like that bigger overlap, because then they stay and they don't gap open, you know, when you put your pillow in there. Get this. Oh, hi, Nancy. All right, so I'm going to get this one. So here's my little, where my overlap is. So I'm going to pin here. And we're going to sew over that twice, because these are also like to rip. So get this one, and then we're going to do the other side. Turn it over. Get this side. Match up my centers. So here's my centers. Really like this gray backing. This is pretty. I was just trying to, I was looking through my scraps, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have like a half a yard and plus a little bit more of this. And I thought I can make the back out of that. So it's actually Kimberbell fabric. I didn't have the red. I think the other kits had, didn't they have some sort of a red in them for the other, for the kits for this? I think it was a red. And I don't think when I did my original one, mine has a different fabric on it, because I had only a half yard of that particular red. I didn't have another fat quarter, so I had to use, so like the kit comes with a half yard. And so what I did is I took that half yard and just normally just add a fat quarter, but I didn't happen to have one. So I have a different fabric on the back of mine, but that's fine too. I just like this other overlap better. So, okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start, and we're just going to, this is an envelope back. So we're going to do this just like we do all those little itty bitty pillows. I'm going to start though where that overlap is. going to go back to my Q tab, to my Q02 for my 1/4 inch seam. Move my needle over. And then where this overlap is, I want to sew over this twice because they like to rip. So I'm going to start there. Give me a second to grab my pin cushion. Drop my needle and I'm going to tie it off. Let me get a little closer for you. I like to move the camera out of the way of my arm. Oops, hopefully it's going to focus for you. And then we're going to sew over. This is where one of those overlaps is, okay? Then when I get up to the other pin, I am going to back up over that same area because I like to sew this like 3 times. And you could use like a triple stitch here, but I just found that this little method worked really well for me. I know it seems silly, but okay. But it does work quite well. Let me get this out of the way. There we go. And then I'm going to sew down to the corner. Okay. I've got my pivot feature on, so I'm going to flip this around, hopefully. Or maybe I don't. It's off. Let's turn it back on. I like my pivot because then my foot goes up and down for me. Okay. So we're going to sew along down here. Okay. I think I made a little boo-boo down here, so let me back up here, make sure I get that sewn well down here. There we go. All right. Get all the way around this. So our normal envelope back, you just sew all the way around, so it makes it really, really cool. Hopefully it's behaving itself there. I'm just using the Pima cotton. This is my Pima cotton thread that I'm using in the needle and the bobbin. Down here to my corner. Hopefully I haven't knocked everything off of my table here. All right, round the corner we go. So we're getting close to another one of those overlaps, so we're going to reinforce that. Okay, so here I'm stabbing myself with this. These are so big. All right, so I'm coming up to that where that pin is. I'm going to go over it very slowly. And then I'm going to go up to this other pin. That's where the other overlap is. And then I'm going to back up over it so that we can reinforce that area. I've always struggled with envelope backs because they always wanted to rip, where that little overlap is, because there's kind of some stress there. And so after I figured out that I could just, sew over it 3 times, that seemed to do the trick for me. Ugh. A lot of pins in this, so they're sticking me. Doing my 1/4 inch seam. And it does work better when you're doing big stuff like this to take your embroidery unit off. Mine's still on because I just was embroidering this afternoon, so I didn't take it off. I usually do when I'm doing big stuff. Just a little easier. Things like to get stuck in the hole behind the embroidery unit on my table. So, all right, we're getting close, guys. Hasn't this been a fun project? I'm really looking forward to. So remember, starting in January, then we're going to start doing those little Kimberbell cuties, the little table toppers, and I'm really looking forward to doing all of those. I've got 4 of them done. I'm going to back up. This is another one of those little overlap areas. So I'm backing up over that area. There we go. I like to leave the pins in there so I know where I'm backing up to. I'm going to go over that slowly. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to go down to the end. So I have decided that we are going to start cuties. Normally there's only 4 Sundays in January. Well, this year there are 5. So normally I take 1 off anyway, and I would have taken 1 off for the holiday. So I've decided that I just need some time. I need to work on my dad's house and some stuff. So we're going to start up again with the cuties on the 15th of January. Okay, so I'm going to take, so we'll only have 3 classes in January. And the first 2 will be the Kimberbell cuties. So the first class will be, we will piece it. We'll do the piecing part, okay? And the second class then, and then I will do a pre-recorded video for the quilting. Okay, so I'll put that up at the same time as the piecing when we do that live. And then I'll do a pre-recorded video. Actually, no, Cindy, really, I'm not either. And the blocks are very simple. They're not hard blocks at all. And I'm really not a quilter either. I don't piece hardly at all. I like to piece, you know, if I have time, but I don't very often. So no, these blocks are not hard. If I can do them, you can do them. Okay. So we're going to do the blocks. So the first week of the 15th of January, we'll do the piecing of and we're going to start with the February cutie. So we're going to do the January one next December. So we'll do that one last. We're going to do January last. Okay. So we'll start with the February one. And then I'm going to do a pre-record. Okay. So here's my overlap. I'm going to go over this between these 2 pins, and I'm going to back up over it to reinforce it. And then I will have a pre-recorded video for the, and I'm going to use the Kimberbell clear blue tiles to quilt these. And I'll have a video that I'm going to pre-record so that you can watch that for each month for the quilting. So if you, and I'm not going to do the quilting live. I thought I'd just do a pre-recorded video so you'd be able to go back to it and reference it for all the cuties. And then the second week of that we meet, we will do the embroidery. So each month next year we will do, the first week will be the piecing of the top, and the second week will be the embroidery, and then the pre-recorded video will be there for you for all of the quilting. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do while I'm off for about 4 weeks. Actually, it might be 5. I decided to do 1 more week off just because all of the holidays are also on Sunday. So, you know, the holidays are going to be busy, and I need to have a couple of extra Sundays off. So that's why I decided to wait an extra week. It's just because all the, you know, Christmas is on Sunday and so is New Year's. So I just decided to take an extra week off this year just because of that. And there's 5 Sundays in January this year. Okay, so we're back to where we began. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie off, and then the last week in January. So we'll still have 3 classes in January. So the last week in January, we are going to do photo stitch. We're going to do a photo stitch class because a lot of people have been asking me about those photo stitches that I do. So we're going to do that at the end of January for a software class. And then February we'll start, you know, the first 2 weeks will be the March bench, or the March cutie. So we're going to do them a month ahead. Okay. All right. So now we're done with the back. And the first thing we're going to do is just pull it through the large area. So we're not going to do the ends until we're ready to put the pillow in, after we get the pillow in it. So I'm just going to pull this through. I'm going to put my arm through here. Okay. And I'm going to grab the other end here, and we're just going to pull it through the back. Okay, and I'm going to be kind of careful because I think all my rhinestones were not warm anymore, so they should be fine. And then what I do is I just leave the ends like this until I'm ready to put my pillow in, and then I flip the ends over the pillow. Okay, so let's see how we did here. Ooh, that looks nice. I like that darker. What do you think of that darker blue in there? I like that darker blue. Okay, and then I'll press this out nice on the edges. Sometimes I just go along and then I'll press these edges out a little bit. But what do you think? there is our finished pillow. And then let me talk a little bit about the pillow form. I would really recommend just making them. I mean, you can buy them, but they have that soft, stuff, that acrylic stuff on them, and I'm just constantly burning that stuff, or I put holes in it or something if I get an iron near it. So they give you the instructions to make the insert the pillow form. So you take 2 pieces of muslin that are 16 by 38, and then just do a 1/4 inch seam all the way around and leave an opening, at the bottom or on one of the ends, whatever you want, and then just stuff it. And so what I do when I'm stuffing them, I just kind of stuff the corners and I work my way into the center of the pillow. Okay. And then if you kind of lay it down when you think you're about done with it, if you kind of lay it down and you just kind of beat it with your hands, it'll smooth it out really nice. So I usually just make mine out of muslin. Muslin works really great for the, yeah, don't you like that, the blue? I like those blue borders because the other ones are a lot more green. So yeah, I'm not a green person. So when I saw this, I thought, well, it's not quite the right color, but it looks nice. So what do you think? I think I'm going to like this one. All right, so this one is a Christmas gift for some friends. So this one will be going to Kathy and Orland. This is their pillow. So I have another Christmas present ready. So yeah, I really like the blue. So what do you think, everybody? So is everybody ready to do their own? Is everybody going to get their own done? I know some of you already have them done. People have been working on it. I really like the gray backing. So here's the backing. You can see it a little bit better now. So I had it inside out. But isn't that pretty? I like the gray backing. So, all right. So I think I'm about done. I think I've got all my embellishments even on. I don't have to even work after class. I get to stop working today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Give me a second to switch the camera up here. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Let me get my microphone switched over. Okay, so thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. Enjoy finishing up your pillow. I'm ready to, I need to press it a little bit. And then remember, we're going to be starting on the 15th of January. So everybody have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Okay. And I will see you in the new year. I will maybe put a couple of, I'll probably put a couple of videos up during the holiday time. Because I've got a couple things I need to, tell everybody and everything. So I'll put some stuff up, but have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I will see you on the 15th of January. Be watching the group. I'll be putting the classes up, and I'll be putting the events and scheduling them. I just haven't had time to get all that done yet. So now I have a little time this next week. I'll be working on that. So, okay. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night and Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.